right. We'll do the lesson a little bit different today. This is actually a lesson that Brother Brian taught to the youth class back in January. Although I've adapted it more for us here today, but that's why we're doing slides, because they were already pretty much made, so I'm going to reuse them. Wanted to start with this quote. It says, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." Because, it's true. If you think you can do something, then you'll put forth every effort to be able to accomplish what you think you can accomplish. But if you start thinking that you can't, well, you've already lost the battle, because a lot of the things that you accomplish in life is determined by whether you think you can accomplish them or not. And it's very true for every aspect of life. If you think you can't live for God, then you can't. But if you think you can, then you'll be able to make it. It's like my Sunday school teacher told me years ago. If you live for God easy, it's hard. But if you live for God hard, it's easy. So it's just the way you think about something can determine how it is. And I can't help but think, most of you know that I've been involved in Bible quizzing for decades, over 30 years now. But 10 years ago, I started working on a project, and I approached Brother Bobby Long, our national quiz director at the time, and I said, "Brother Long, I think I can write some software that'll make things better for Bible quizzing." And he said, well, have at it. If you think you can do it, do it. Well, then I was able to make some matrix software, some tournament software, and then he said, well, do you think you'll be able to add scorekeeping to that? Oh, I think I can do that. And so I did. And after I did that, he's like, wow, it'd be awesome if we could hook up a buzzer system to this. Do you think you can create a buzzer system that could work with this software and we could use it at our tournaments? It's like, well, I don't know. That's a big task. I've never worked with hardware before. I mean, I can program a computer to do just about anything, but building the equipment to work with it, I've never done that before. But I got online and I searched around, and well, you know, I found a way to do that too. But it all boiled down to I thought I could do it. I thought I could help. And so I did. So a lot of what you can accomplish in life, if you just think you can do it, then most likely you can. And that's especially true with our finances. If you think that you can save a little, well, chances are you can. Or if you think that you could be able to afford something one day, you probably will be able to. Of course, as we know with finance, it's a lot harder than buying a lottery ticket, which you're not supposed to do, and just pray for the best. You have to work at it. So this morning we're going to talk about stewardship. But before we define what stewardship is, especially when you talk about money, you need to think about what's your purpose. And so these are big picture thoughts this morning. So what is your purpose? What's your purpose in life? What's your purpose in church? And then also think about, what are your goals? And this is true at any stage of your life. I mean, it's not just applicable to those high school students this lesson was originally taught to. But all of us can reevaluate our current situation and say, well, what is my purpose right now in life? What is my purpose in the church? What can I do to benefit my situation and those I come in contact with and my current state? What can I do to benefit, to be of benefit? Not just to benefit, but to be of benefit. And what are your goals? Are they definable? Can you define what your goals are? Can you measure your goals? And are they achievable? And I can tell you from experience, you can't just make a goal, I'm going to graduate from college. That was my goal when I was a little kid back in elementary school. I was like, I'm going to be a college graduate. But it took a lot more than just having a desire to go to college. I had to start right then, Sister Green, and put forth every effort I could to make it, because my parents told me, starting out in life, they said, we don't have the money to send you to college. If you want to go to college, you're going to have to work 3 jobs, or you're going to have to get scholarships to go to college. And so, well, I thought about that, and I thought, well, I don't have to work my way through college. So I'm going to get scholarships. But you can't just walk up and say, I'd like a scholarship. What you have to do is you have to start in elementary school saying, I'm going to soak up every bit of information that they throw my way, and I'm going to work really hard and make the best grades possible because I want to go to college. And I don't just want to go to college, but I want to get a scholarship to go to college so I don't have to work 3 jobs to pay for it. And so I did that because I thought I could. And I worked really hard, and I wasn't the top in my class. I didn't graduate valedictorian, but I did get a full paid scholarship to college regardless. And the Lord helped me a lot along the way, but it's because I set the goals and I made them definable, measurable. I'm going to make straight A's this grading period. Then I'm going to keep that A average all year. And I'm going to do extra assignments. I'm going to volunteer. I used to volunteer at a Baptist church to go tutor little kids how to read. I mean, you find opportunities to pad your resume so that you stand out when you apply to these colleges. And I made it my goal from a very young age that I was going to do that. I had definable goals, measurable goals, and they were achievable because I put my whole heart into it. I found out I didn't have to be the brightest. I just had to put forth more effort to make up any difference I had in intellect. So what's your purpose and what are your goals? And then this really big question here. How can you fulfill your purpose and meet your goals if you're just struggling to keep your head above the water financially? And we're not just going to talk about finances today, but it's a big part of it, because if all you're doing is trudging every day, working 3 jobs to pay the bills, then you don't have much time to get out and do other things, become involved in other activities that can be a benefit to the church and to your family. And so taking care of your finances is a big deal towards even your spirituality. So stewardship, that's what we're going to talk about. Stewardship is the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. You think, whoa, wait a sec, aren't we talking about finances here? How can stewardship apply to managing your money right? Well, really, if you think about it, it boils down to how you look at money. How do you view money? Do you view it as it's something I've worked hard for and I've earned it and it's for me and mine? If you look at money that way, you're missing the whole point. Because everything we have is because God allowed us to have it. And if you start looking at your finances as, this isn't mine, but this is something that God has entrusted me with, then it will totally change the way you see things, especially the way that you see your finances. Because if you start viewing this as, it's not really mine, I'm just being a steward of what the Lord has blessed me with. He's blessed me with a job so that I can earn some money so that I can then be a good steward of that money. So it all boils down to stewardship. And thinking of everything you own, not just money, but the things, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, the house you live in, the bed you sleep in, everything is a gift from God. And if you start thinking of it as it's not really mine, but if you start thinking of it as this is just entrusted to me, it will change the way you live. It will change the way you think about what you have. Stewardship is also an ethic that embodies the responsible planning and management of resources. Again, it's managing something that you are entrusted with. That's what stewardship is. Okay, and we should strive to bring honor to God with our finances. But we're not just talking about our tithes and offerings. And a lot of people just stop there. They say, okay, I'm going to give my tithes and I'm going to give my offerings. Well, not every Christian does that because, you know, when you look at the entire people who call themselves Christians, they give less than 3% to the church on average. Of course, here at our church, we believe that tithe, as the Bible teaches, is 10% of your first fruit, of the first increase. But it's more than just tithe, and it's more than just what you put in that offering plate or what you donate to the church. We should be honest in our business dealings. And this is a real big one. Because when you're eating out at that restaurant and your steak comes out not exactly right, there are ways to handle that situation. You can politely request that it be thrown back on the grill or recooked, but if you develop an attitude, a self-serving attitude, and are very rude and disrespectful to those workers who are just trying to make a living, you know, or if you say you're going to do something and don't follow through when it's your job to do it, and if you don't follow that verse in Ecclesiastes that says, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. If you don't put forth your best effort out there in the workforce, where your boss knows, I can depend on that person because I know they're going to put their whole heart into doing a good job for me, then you're not being a good witness. Because, like it or not, we stand out. We stand out in the way we look. We stand out in the way we dress. And because we stand out, we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Especially where we work. Especially when we're out in the public eating at a restaurant. Or buying groceries. Or even going to the auto repair shop to get our car fixed. Every time you come in contact with somebody else, you're a witness. And we need to make that a top priority. I'm going to do my best to present myself well and be a good steward. Because, like it or not, you're a witness whether you want to be one or not. And we should be honest in our business dealings. We should always try to go above and beyond what other people would do. We should live a contented life. Not everybody is blessed with as many resources as everybody else. You may not have as much as some other people. But you should learn to be content, as Paul said, in whatever state you are in. Whatever you are blessed with, you need to learn to be content with that. And if you could ever get a hold of that one, that would save you a lot of heartache and struggle in life. If you would just learn to be content with what you have. We should be cautious with debt. Proverbs 22 verse 7 says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. You know, if you find yourself in debt, you've placed yourself in servanthood, because you are a servant to that lender until that debt is repaid. Of course, if you do owe a debt, you need to make every effort to pay it off. Don't take the easy way out and file for bankruptcy if there's any way possible that you can pay what you said you would pay. Because there are ways that you could get around the system, especially in America today. There are all kinds of ways that you can not pay back what you said you would. And you can even do it in a lot of legal ways. But that doesn't change the fact that it's not honest. It's not the right thing to do. If you take on a debt, you should do the right thing and pay it back. And then we should be able to help those in need. You should always be in a position where if someone around you has a need, you should be able to help those in need. So striving to bring honor to God with our money goes way beyond just paying our tithes and just giving an offering. It goes to how we deal with others. It goes to how content we are with what we have. With how well we handle our finances, not getting ourselves sunk so deep in debt we can't even pay the interest every month. We should be able to help those in need. You should have extras so that when a need arises where someone is struggling, that you're able to be a help and a blessing to them. So there are people out there known as spendthrifts, and they're people who spends money, who is recklessly wasteful, often to the point where the spending climbs well beyond his or her means. You never want to be a spendthrift. It's not in the will of God for us to just blow through what we're blessed with and never have anything left over. God doesn't want us to live that way. Whether you're wealthy and do it, or whether you're not as well off and do it. Nobody should live above their means. Turn to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12, starting at verse 13. This is a parable that Jesus told. It says, "And one of the company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me." So apparently this man was having family problems with the division of an inheritance that they must have inherited from maybe a parent. And Jesus said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness. And then he says this very profound statement to them. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. A man's life consists not in the abundance of the things which he owns. You know, the world teaches a much different story about a definition of success in life. But really, your life does not, the success of your life is not shown by what you own, by how large your house is, what kind of car you drive, what kind of clothes you wear. That's not how your life's success is determined. And Jesus was trying to get this across to this young man. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, and I want you to notice here how many times rich man uses the word I. Notice how much he uses the word I. So this rich man thinks within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich toward God. Now this parable spoke of a rich man who's saying, I have this, and I'm going to do that, and it's all going to be for me, me, me. But you know, even if you don't have much, you can still get that same attitude and say, this is mine. It's for me. I worked hard for this, and it is mine, mine, mine. And the Lord doesn't want us to think that way. The Lord doesn't want us to be that way with our finances or our increase or with our things or with our lives. He doesn't want us to be self-centered. He doesn't want us to think this is all for me and I'm doing this for me. And there's a danger in having that self-serving attitude that this rich farmer had. Now let's turn to Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6. We'll start at verse number 6. It says, go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. So he's telling us, look at how the ant lives its life. So consider what she does, and I want you to gain some wisdom from this. It says, which, having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. So this little ant provides her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. In other words, this little ant, of its own accord, it's not forced to do this by some ruler lording over it, but it of its own accord plans for the future. It says, I'm going to gather my meat in the summer, and I'm going to provide meat in the summer, I'm going to gather food in the harvest, and that way I'll have enough to sustain me through the winter, when the times are tough. So consider what the ant does and gain wisdom from that, because that's how God wants us to do. He doesn't want us to live paycheck to paycheck. He doesn't want us to barely be able to make ends meet. He wants us to be wise. So, planning for the future, and I'm not going to talk very much about budgeting. We talked a whole lot about this in that Sunday school class. But one of the things we commented about is you can't be like Rascal and curl up in a little ball and think it's just going to all work itself out. You know, you have to plan things. You have to create a budget and stick with it. You have to look ahead and not just think of, well, today. You have to be like that little ant and plan for the future. So budgeting, a lot of people think budget is just what you spend. It's just worried about, how you're going to spend, but it also, your budget explains your spending and your saving. A lot of people think, well, there's no room in my budget for any saving. Well, you'd be surprised. You'd be very surprised. This doesn't really apply to most of us in here because it's too late for most of us, if not all of us. But just to give you an idea, and that you can give this advice to your children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren, but Brad, in this scenario, he started saving when he was 18 years old, and he saved $2,000 a year. Well, that's just under $200 a month, about $170 or so a month. So he was able to save that much, starting at age 18, and he saved for 16 years, and then he stopped. And so he saved $32,000 of his own money. Okay? So he was dedicated, he was consistent, he invested it, and he earned 5% on his money. The average earnings over the stock market has been about 8%. So he did a little worse than if he invested in the stock market, but he made 5% on his money. But Jenny, she started saving when she was 34. So she started saving later in life, and she saved $2,000 a year, just like Brad did. And she saved every year until she retired at age 65. So she saved $64,000 of her own money, but throughout this time she also invested at 5%. Which of them is going to end up with more money? Brad only invested $32,000 of his money, but he started at age 18. Jenny, she invested $64,000, twice as much of her own money, but she didn't start till she was 34 years old. Well, believe it or not, Brad came out ahead. $78,000 ahead. So Jenny ended up with a total of $158,000 or so dollars, and Brad had a total of $236,000 or so when he retired. So how early you start saving makes a huge difference. And I really wish someone had told me this, or that I had paid more attention, because I didn't start saving until I was 26. But at least I started then, right? But it's amazing, and this is due to that thing called compound interest, where you just set it aside and invest it and leave it alone, and let it keep whatever interest is earned. You just allow it to be reinvested, and over time, it's an amazing thing, and it can be life changing for someone who's starting out. If we can just teach our young people this, if you just save, even if it's giving up Starbucks for the next 10 years, it would be worth it, because it would give you that security for later on. So anyway, budgeting, just to put this in perspective, only 1 in 3 Americans has no money saved for retirement. That's mind-boggling to me. But 1/3 of us hasn't saved a penny for our retirement. Only 13% has saved $300,000 or more. So if you didn't save for retirement and are living paycheck to paycheck, well, you're not alone. But if you haven't and you have the opportunity, I recommend strongly that you start now. It's too late to reverse. What's done is done. But if you start now, every little bit counts. Every little bit helps.
I'm still in the salvageable age. It's just I'd rather spend my money.
Well, speaking of spending money, how long does it take to pay a $2,000 credit card debt if you only pay the minimum payment each month? You know, it's real easy to get that little piece of plastic. It's real easy to run it up. But if you run up a $2,000 credit card bill and you only pay the minimum balance, it would take you over 30 years to pay it off. That is mind-boggling.
Yes, where they make their money.
That's exactly where they make their money.
That's why they're in business.
And you would end up paying more than $4,931 in interest and charges, or 146% more than what you originally owed. This is why bankers have a bad name. This is why they love sending you all those things in the mail saying, use this credit card. Here's this offer. It's because if they can hook you with that 0% for 17 months, and at the end of that 17 months, if you haven't saved where you can pay it off in full, then that's where they get you. So be very careful with credit cards. Do I use credit cards? Yes, I do. I do. I put almost every purchase on my credit card, but I pay it off in full every month. And I have one of those, they pay me money to use that credit cards. As a matter of fact, I make over $800 a year that the bank rewards me with just for using those credit cards. But it wouldn't be that way if I didn't pay them off every month. So there are ways to work the system to your advantage. And I take advantage of that because I like getting that, what I call free money. So there's nothing wrong with the credit card itself. But if you don't pay it off in full, then you're digging yourself a financial hole that you don't need to be in. It is crazy to pay the kind of interest they require. Even if you have excellent credit, the interest on a credit card is at least 11%. And to pay 11%, that's crazy. So, of course, there's a lot of people paying 24, 26% and just making minimum payments because they've dug themselves into a hole and haven't been wise with their finances. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. It's a verse that we need to remember and to live by. It says, "But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is He that giveth thee power to get wealth, that He may establish His covenant which He sware unto thy fathers as it is this day." In other words, we need to every day remember that everything we have, every talent you have, every ability you have, is because God gave you that ability. And every wealth you gain from using those talents and abilities, it's because God gave it to you. And if you can ever get that mindset, then you will manage your money more wisely, because you'll see it not as mine, but I'm just a steward of what the Lord has blessed me with. So remember the Lord thy God, for it's He that giveth thee power to get wealth. And if you ever lose sight of that, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Now, even if whether you earn a lot or a little, the principle is the same. It's all from God. Oh, does it? What does it say? Sir, I didn't bring my paper Bible today.
And thou shalt remember the Lord and it shall be, if thou do at all forget the Lord thy God, and walk after other gods, and serve them and worship them, I testify against you this day that ye shall surely perish.
So we have a responsibility, and we're created to glorify and serve God in the way we live, and that includes how we handle our money. Glorifying God with our finances, it isn't just limited to being faithful with tithes and offerings, but it is in every way you deal with money, whether it's spending it, earning it, paying it, whatever. And every day we make choices. Unfortunately, only hindsight helps us experience and appreciate the gravity of those choices. I recall a story of an elderly banker who was retiring. He was a very successful banker. And he was training the young man who was going to be his replacement as president of this bank. And the young man asked him, he said, what's your secret to being a good banker? This man had a great reputation. And he said, well, my secret is you need to learn how to make good choices. You make good decisions. And the young man says, okay, well, how do you go about making good decisions? And the older banker says, well, it's from experience. Through experience, you learn how to make good decisions. The young man says, okay, well, how do I gain experience fast? And he said, well, you make bad decisions. You want to gain experience fast, you make bad decisions.
Got that right.
And that will, you'll learn quick. So, but we are faced with choices every day, and those choices determine tomorrow. They determine our path. And if you want to be in control of your money, it's critical you understand where your money goes. Now, at this point in the class, we had the kids write out a budget. Where's your money going? How did you spend this last week? Do you know where your money went? And if you've never written down where you've spent every penny, I suggest you do that, because it will be eye-opening to you. It is amazing how much money we just spend. So I challenge you, write out where your money's going. And the more you do that, the less you'll be tempted to go through that drive-thru or to impulse buy that thing that you just really don't need. Same thing works with eating. When I write down what I eat, then I'm less likely to splurge because I'm held accountable. Accountability is a huge motivator. So anyway, that was free. All right, there are about 2,350 verses on finances and possessions in the Bible. That's a lot of verses. As a matter of fact, it's more verses than all 13 letters in the New Testament that Paul wrote. So obviously, God cares about our view of our possessions and our view of money to teach so much in Scripture about it. That's mind-boggling. But if you think about it, it's really true. Look at most of Jesus' parables. More than half of them dealt with possessions and money. It's a big deal to God. And I don't think we focus on it quite as much as we probably should in our training up our children in the way they should go. Because if they get a good foundation, then chances are we could prepare them better for saving them a lot of heartache in the future. Let's look at a few verses on stewardship. Matthew 6:21 says, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." You know, what you spend your money on tells a lot about you. And by the same token, this isn't just about money. How you spend your time tells a lot about you, about what you care about. Who you spend your time with says a lot about who you are. Because where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. You want to know what's in a person's heart? Take a look. Take a look at how they live, who they hang out with, what they do, and what they spend their money on. Ecclesiastes 5:15. There were several verses in the Bible that say the same thing. I just picked this one. It says, "As he came forth of his mother's womb, naked shall he return to go as he came, and shall take nothing of his labor which he may carry away in his hand." In other words, you came into this world with nothing, and you're going to leave out of this world with nothing. You can't take it with you. So, it's humbling. It's humbling to think that all this labor, you just have one life to live, one way to live it. And if all you're doing is working so you can accumulate stuff, that stuff isn't going to mean a single thing when you take your last breath. But what is going to have meaning is, what kind of life did you live? It's like that one of my favorite songs, Point of Grace sang years ago. It's not what you have and it's not what you do, but it's how you live. It's going to be how you impacted those around you. They won't care what kind of car you drove, what kind of clothes you wore, what kind of house you lived in. But if you made a positive impact, if you were a godly example, if you gave of yourself so much, and I'm not talking money here. I'm talking if you helped others, if you taught others about God, if you lived your life as an example to others and were that shining light in a dark world, if you gave, if you made every effort to, I'm going to make this world a better place than how I came into it. I'm going to be that person that holds that door open for that wheelchair man who's struggling to get through the door. I'm going to be that person when someone drops something, I'm going to pick it up for them. Or if they're struggling, I'm going to slip that $100 bill into their purse without them even knowing about it. I'm going to do, and I'm going to be that one that just makes the world a better place. Even if it's just the little Porter, Texas we live in. I'm going to make a positive impact in whatever way I can, by the way I live. In other words, I'm going to be a good steward with what God has blessed me with. And I'm not talking money here. I'm just going to live in such a way that I make a positive impact. Money's part of it, but it's not but a fraction. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2 says, "Moreover, it's required in stewards that a man be found faithful." You need to be faithful. You need to be able to be counted on. Trustworthy. When God gave you a talent, just like that parable of the talents teaches us in Scripture, when you're given a talent, God expects you to be a good steward of that talent and to use it. Whether it's money or the ability to do things, whatever God has blessed you with, He expects you to use it and for it to be multiplied for others. He wants us to be faithful, honest, trustworthy. And I wanted to end our lesson looking at Proverbs 31 because this is a ladies' Bible study, and Proverbs 31, we all know, is the chapter on a virtuous woman. And in looking over the qualities of a virtuous woman in that chapter this week, a Proverbs 31 woman works hard. She spends wisely. She gives freely. She plans ahead for the future. Look at Proverbs 31:13. It says she seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. She's a hard worker. Proverbs 31:16, she considereth a field and buyeth it. So she makes wise investments. And she also plans for the future. Sometimes it takes sacrifice to make an investment. But if you're thinking ahead and not just thinking in the moment, for now, but I'm going to think ahead. And she knew if I buy this field, then I'm going to be able to plant and grow things that it'll give me for decades to come. I'll gain from that investment. Yeah, she could have just gone to the market and bought the food, but she was wise. She said, I'm going to buy this land and I'm going to work hard and I'm going to develop it. And then I'll be able to reap the fruits that the land provides. She made wise choices. Proverbs 31:20 says, she stretcheth out her hand to the poor. Yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She's constantly looking for ways she can help others. And if you're in a position where all you can do is struggle to take care of you and your own, how are you going to be able to help others? You know, God doesn't want us to live that way. He doesn't want us to live struggling. But He wants us to take what He's given us and then to use that to help others. To be in that position where we can be a help. Proverbs 31:27 says, she looketh well to the ways of her household and eateth not the bread of idleness. She's not lazy. She's not lazy. And that's the way we need to be. And you'll find that if you are willing to put forth the effort, that God will bless you for that. That you will find favor in the eyes of God. Remember that Bible study we learned, I guess it's been 2 or 3 years now, about God's favor? You know, God will favor those who live by His precepts, by His standards. If you follow these rules of stewardship, the Lord will bless you for it. And will continue to bless you for it. And I don't have it in our scripture, but in Malachi. And I think Brother Green might have mentioned this last night, but the Lord said, try me and see if I won't open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you can't contain. So just you try to outgive and outdo for God. You can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. You can't outgive God. You can't be sacrificial and the Lord not bless you for it. And if you really think about it, actually before I go over this, I wanted to tell y'all a story that I read. It's a true story. Happened in 1946. You recall, this is right after World War II. And during that time, there were a lot of families that struggled. There were a lot of widows. And this one family, the dad had perished in the war, presumably, but it was a mom and 3 teenage daughters. And they were making it, doing their best to make ends meet. And a month before Easter, they went to Sunday service, and the pastor made an appeal to the church. He said, we're going to take up a special offering on Easter Sunday morning to help a poor family in our church. And I want y'all to really dig down deep sacrificially and work hard to give extra on Easter Sunday morning to help a family in our church. And so the mom and her 3 daughters get home that afternoon, and they get to discussing ways that they can save. And so they thought, well, let's buy a 50-pound bag of potatoes, and we'll save $20 in groceries. And this is back in 1946. If we eat nothing but 50 pounds of potatoes for the month. And so they lived off potatoes. And the daughters, the teenage daughters, said, well, we're going to get some house cleaning jobs and some babysitting jobs and bring in extra money. And the mom worked harder. And at the end of the month, day before Easter Sunday, the mom goes to she takes all their bundled up money and brings it to the grocery store and she got 3 $20 bills, crisp new $20 bills, and 1 crisp new $10 bill. So that mom and those 3 daughters, in 1946, in that 1 month time, sacrificed and worked really hard so that they could be a blessing to somebody. And that Easter Sunday morning, as they passed the offering plate, the mom gave the 10 and each daughter gave a 20. And they were so happy to have done that. And they gave $70 in that offering. And then that afternoon, the mom surprised the girls she had taken some of that hard-earned money and bought a dozen eggs so they could have eggs with their potatoes for Easter meal. And they enjoyed their meal together, and then there was a knock at the door. And it was the pastor. He handed the mom an envelope. And in that envelope were 3 crisp $20 bills, a crisp new $10 bill, and 17 ones. And the mom walked in the house, and they just started crying. They were devastated. They had no idea that they were the poor family. So they go to church the next Sunday morning, and there was a visiting missionary. And he was telling about how in Africa, they didn't have any money to build churches. So they would build the church walls out of brick and, they would make bricks out of the dirt and water. But you had to have money to build the roofs. And he said it cost $100 to build a roof. About that time, the daughters and the mama looked at each other. They smiled. When that offering plate for the roof money came around, they put in that $87. And later on in that service, the pastor announced that they had received a little over $100 in the offering. This was a country church back in 1946. And that missionary was so overcome with joy that they were going to be able to build a roof for a church in Africa that he made the comment. He said, boy, this church must have a bunch of rich people to be able to give this kind of an offering. And that little family walked out of that church thinking, yeah, we're the rich family he was talking about. Because you see, it's not how much you have, but it's how you view what you have. And I think that's a good note to live on, to leave off on, because you make decisions every day, and there really are only 3 choices when it comes to money. You can live above your means, where you spend more than what you have, and you dig yourself a hole in debt. Or you can choose to live within your means. That's where everything that comes in goes out, but you're doing fine. You're not in debt. You're living within your means. But then there's a third way you can live, and that's living below your means. Where, yeah, I could afford a BMW. I could afford nicer clothes. I could afford nicer cars. I could afford a nicer house. But you choose to live below your means, because when you get to the place where you live below your means, think of the doors it opens for you to be a blessing to others. Because if you think of it as it's not really mine, but I'm just a steward of what God has blessed me with, it will revolutionize and change the way you live. So I hope y'all got something out of this lesson.
I feel like it was an intervention to keep me from going any further.